The whole HS2 project is in a kind of purgatory at the moment. It was put into review by Boris Johnson's government. The review was led by a former chair of HS2, a supporter of HS2, Doug Oakervey. But he was balanced by a deputy who was known to be sceptical of the project. So it would be a proper independent review with different views upon it. Well, the review has gone somewhat pear-shaped as Doug Oakervey and his deputy completely disagree. So a draft report was leaked on Monday that was finding in favour of keeping HS2 alive despite huge cost overruns. But we also know the deputy has completely disassociated himself from it, saying the process and the conclusions were flawed. Now, he is Lord Berkeley, Tony Berkeley, a Labour peer. This is an important interview because I spoke to him earlier.
Well, I think if one is deputy chair for something like this, with known possibly differences of opinion to start with, it's very important that we should both go to the particularly important meetings if we can, like with the non-execs of HS2, with the board of TfL, and with a load of other people that might influence what we say. And that didn't happen, I'm afraid.
And that didn't happen because you couldn't make it, or because the diaries didn't match up, or because you weren't invited?
I wasn't told about them till after they'd happened. That's why.
Right. And so did Doug Oakervey tend to go to those ones on his own or with one official?
Yes, he did, yeah. That's right, yeah.
Is your suspicion that having appointed Doug Oakervey to chair this review, everyone would say, hang on, he's going to be supporting HS2 because he used to run HS2. And then they said, let's put Lord Berkeley in to balance it up. And that in a way you were there to make it look more independent. Is that without it really being independent?
Well, maybe. I mean, we start off, as you've said, from different standpoints. On the other hand, we had a terms of reference, which you'll have read, which were quite clear that we had to do an independent report. And I was hoping that we were going to do that. I'm not trying to kill the project, or I'm not trying to suggest it goes ahead, because I think there's lots of different options we would have looked at and we should have looked at, and presented a paper to this report to the Secretary of State, which says, well, here are your different options. It's up to you to choose. I
get the feeling you have a suspicion that through this entire project, there's been an attempt to disguise the true cost, that attempt is continuing now. The 88 billion, which is the sort of existing new figure, is still too low. You're thinking more like 100, 103. And I suppose the suspicion would be that you get the project off the ground by pretending it's 50 billion or 30 billion, 50 billion, 80 billion. And then once you realise it's 100 billion, it's too late to cancel it. Is that what you think has been going on here?
This is my real worry. I did find that whereas the Secretariat from the Department of Transport were very helpful in getting information about passenger numbers and other things like that, when it came to talking about costs, it suddenly got very difficult. I do get the impression that there was something being hidden, and my worry is that it will be over 100, maybe it'll be more than that, who knows? Because there's quite a lot of work that hasn't yet been finished yet.
Well, let's look at that benefit-cost ratio, because this is the basic way in which these projects are always appraised. Now, you say that when in this review, as they've looked at the benefit-cost ratio, they've assumed the 88 billion, and they've assumed you can run 18 trains per hour, which basically they can't. And if you run 14 trains per hour, which is they can, that would change the benefit-cost ratio.
Well, that's right. I mean, they do, in the report that was in the Times this week, they did accept, the report accepts that 14 trains an hour is the likely maximum. But the problem is when they come to doing the benefit-cost ratio calculation in the report, they use a figure of 18 trains an hour. And of course, that pushes up the revenue quite dramatically and makes it all look better, but you can't deliver 18 trains with the current technology. That's the problem. There are other ways of changing the economic geography and transport scene, is actually to put much of this money into improving the services in the Midlands and the North, which are terrible at the moment.
I'm just interested in the dynamics. I know this is sort of intrusive between you and Doug Oakervey. You were the kind of the odd couple put together to try and work this out and come up with the decided line. It looks, Lord Berkeley, like you have failed to do that. I mean, he is really says let's go with it and let's use optimistic figures. You say this is all just rush to judgment or rush to prejudgment, really. It's a pity that you haven't managed to make this work as an inquiry, as a review.
Well, it is a great pity. I mean, we're good friends, and we've talked about these things many times. But it's just that what came out of that report, which happened a few days after the last time I read it, was rather different to what I had hoped would come out into it. And I mean, we'd have to find Doug's view on this to see what he thinks about it. But I'm sure he believes very strongly in what he's put in the report. But again, the report that was in the Times may not be the final one. I mean, I don't know whether it's actually gone in yet. I mean, we haven't been told.
No, and it's obviously been delayed till after the election. Nothing formal will come out. And
Yeah.
if you were to write the 2-sentence summary of the report as you would have liked it, just give it to me now. What would it be?
2 sentences. Well, we've taken a lot of evidence. The costs are very high. The benefits are not so high, and so it doesn't look good from a cost benefit. We can either go ahead and spend lots of money building it, or we can look at other options for giving the benefits to where it's really needed in the Midlands and the North for commuters and local services as well.
Lord Berkeley, who's been part of a review into HS2 and has many questions about whether the project should go ahead.